Okay, here we're going to prepare you to identify thesis statements, and the best way to identify thesis statements in humanities or like liberal arts or English or philosophy is to look at human intention. Why are people doing what they're doing? Okay, because if you ask yourself a question in science or in physics, those are hypotheses, and you would ask something like, why does soap work? Why does a certain chemical react a certain way to a body or so forth, or many different phenomenon in science, and then you would prove it. Okay, in thesis statements, they're not so easy to prove like you are like in science, but you can offer evidence and support and a good logical statement in your paper to say, if we make a statement about human society or action, then here's the evidence to show that we are right about this. Okay, so when I said that envy is important in a society that has a hierarchical structure, that's a thesis statement. Okay, I could be true, it could be not, but if you look at the evidence and you look at the statement and the logic, it's most likely going to be true. The other types of thesis statements that are easy to use are cause and effect, but that goes back to an intention is a cause and effect, but another type of cause and effect would be like, what was the reason behind, or what were the causes of World War II? That's a cause and effect type of thesis statement. Okay, so when you make thesis statements or when you identify them, they're not obvious statements. We know that Christopher Columbus traveled west to find gold, to find land in the Indies, to land in the Indies. So that would not be a thesis statement. Okay, so right now what we're going to do is we're going to look at culture, and we're going to identify the different types of ways of looking at human behavior. Okay, and that will help us with identifying these statements. The first thing is human nature. Okay, so when we look at action, we're going to ask ourselves, is this human nature? Okay, what are characteristics of human beings? Is envy a cultural thing, or are we born envious?
Cultural.
Some of you say cultural. We're born with it in very small ways, right? Okay, like two kids. Okay, what about greed? It's cultural. Little kids aren't greedy. Native Americans, you can get greedy. Okay, so one of the things that make us all common is our limitedness. We have our fear of death. Okay, we could die at any time. I'm sorry to say that's, and you are gonna die. I'm sorry to say that too. Sorry. Why are you guys laughing? It's gonna happen, man. To me too. Everyone. Okay. Start living life. Makes you every time you have that question, it makes you kind of re-examine your priorities. Okay, so what does the fear of death do? It causes people and their limitations. It causes people to have a sense of insecurity. At any time, you can threaten me, or we can threaten each other. So we begin to fear each other a little bit. Other types of insecurities could be our fear that we're not big enough, like in terms of wealthy enough, or we don't have enough control in our lives. And this may cause us to act certain ways, okay? And we call this human nature. So if we look at this, we can go around the world and look at human beings, and we can say, this tribe can act greedy, or brothers could, or families could have fights, or all these things that are what we call common to human nature, okay? The next thing we're going to look is cultural. What is a matter of culture where you're taught? Do you understand how that works? You're taught in a culture to behave a certain way, okay? And what we're concerned about here in this class is Western culture. What is purely Western? So if we give an example here, in Western culture, the individual is more important than the group, okay? The individual is more important than the group. Why don't you guys do your homework? Oh, be careful, don't. Why don't you guys? Okay, not you guys. Let me rephrase this. Why do American kids not do their homework? Laziness. What else? Tired. No, there's an underlining cause. There's an underlining.
They're too busy.
Work. They don't find it a priority.
They don't find it a priority. What if I gave you the answer that you don't have to? No. Who says you have to do your homework? What happens to you when you don't do your homework? Yeah, come on.
Oh, we really don't care.
Do you have the freedom not to do your homework? That's my point. Is yes, you do. You do have the freedom. When you don't do your homework, okay, can I slap you across the face for not doing the homework? Why not? It's illegal. You have rights, right? Okay? In our syllabus, we have rights. And all these other things, I have to respect your rights. At Walmart, can I go to Dan? Hey, Daniel, okay, I need you to go do me this and all that other stuff. I see Daniel at Walmart. Do I have that power at Walmart? No. Okay? But I do have the power to say, Daniel, you got homework, man. Okay? And he has to do it. So this is what I mean in Western culture, that the individual has priority over the group. We protect the individual. We protect your rights. We protect your property. If you get in trouble with the law, there's certain procedures to make sure that the state doesn't get it through. One of the most important things is that you are represented by a lawyer. Okay? That's very important. When we charge you with something, we have to have proof, right? Okay? Just to get through a grand jury and all that other stuff. Okay, so not all societies follow that. In some societies, the group is more important than the individual. Okay? And there are some Eastern societies where the kids always do their homework. Why?
It's a priority.
They have to. They have to. There are consequences. Okay? There are some places where the teachers are allowed to discipline the students. Okay? There are some places where you don't have a lawyer. Do y'all remember the news about the guy that was in North Korea and he took that poster? Okay, and they imagine that. Okay, so order for the group is more important than what happens to the individual. And there's some places where you don't get a lawyer. Okay, and they publicly may punish you, and that would be Western culture. So I need you guys to put this on your notes. When we talk about Western culture, any culture that's influenced by Europe. Okay. So is England Western culture? Yes. What about Spain? What about Mexico? Yes, Mexico is still Western culture. And so is the United States. Okay. Now there's different degrees and they may be changed a little bit, but they all have certain ideas behind that. Okay. Okay, the last thing we're going to look at, and I gave you some examples of Western culture, that the individual, you guys believe in freedom, and you. Well, let me ask you something. Is your opinion important?
Depending.
Oh, depending on what?
Like if it's
it's actually.
There you go. But do Americans think their opinions are important? Okay, that's where we're going to go to. American culture. So what is purely American and not European? Okay, and these is what are characteristics of purely American culture? Can you guys give me an example of what do you see that Americans are truly different at? And a good way to look at this is behaviors in Mexico versus behaviors in the United States. Well, what examples would you guys give me? Okay, a big priority on education?
The way we speak.
Okay. What do you mean by the way we speak?
Slang, we use a lot of slang.
Maybe.
We like speak slang.
Okay, that could be. What other examples you say? You know what? This is purely American. Or when you go to Europe.
This is pure American.
There's a sense of Americans have entitlement. Okay, other Europeans may say that. Okay, maybe. We're right here. We're just making ideas. Like maybe this is the case. This is something you can study and look at, but we're just throwing out some ideas. I've heard. I have never been to Europe. I would like to be in Europe, but I've heard that the way they live mostly in cities, okay, that have no suburbs like we do. So at night, European cities are more vibrant, meaning there's more activities at night. They don't own homes like Americans own homes. So while they're in the city, there's more community interaction. Okay, so going to the cafes is a big deal because then there's more talking. You see this in Manhattan, in older European cities, but if you go to Phoenix, Los Angeles, people go to their homes and they stay within their yard and they're not out and about like you would be in Europe. Yeah, in Europe they're all in about. And it's a very active place. But we'll talk about, as we go through this class, we'll talk about what makes things purely American culture. Okay. Would you agree that Americans have no nobility? We have no right of birth of the way we would say noble. Okay. Does England have nobilities? Yes. They have a princess and a prince or a queen. Okay. Because we have no nobility, we try to maintain a society, and we're the first ones to do this, a society based on meritocracy. Okay? Does everybody understand the concept of merit? Okay, merit means earned. That's all it means. So why would you have an A?
Because you earned it.
You earned it, not because I like you more than someone else or anything like that. Why should you get paid more? Because you earned it. You do the job better. Okay? We try to do this. There are cases, as we will go through history, where we are not necessarily fully working on meritocracy, but we like this idea that the best people are the ones that move up, and not because of who you're born or where you're born or your last name or so forth. Okay, and that's what we call purely American culture.